What were the normal systems and procedures for obtaining information from Fujitsu?
I may be the wrong person to ask. I don't know. And even at that stage, I wasn't aware of it. All I was trying to do, from a practical point of view, from an empirical point of view, from the real world point of view, was trying to get this thing moving.
You treated Mr. Jenkins as an expert.
Well, we couldn't find any experts. I did look.
My question, and I would really appreciate it if I'd appreciate it if you'd focus on my question rather than talking about other stuff.
Mr. Jenkins didn't exist.
Okay, let's talk about the thing I'm talking about.
Okay.
What better evidence do I need for the fact that Mr. Jenkins was an expert than that which you've just said? Will you concentrate on Mr. Beer's questions and answer them a bit more succinctly, please?
So it's very difficult to work something in my head as quickly as Mr. Beer can. Is there any way I can have pen and paper?
Let's have a morning break. Let Mr. Singh have some paper and pen to prepare himself.
So we're jumping back into Jarnail Singh's testimony to the Post Office inquiry, and well, I mean, he's driving us around in circles around the expert roundabout about how he was an expert, wasn't an expert. At one point he calls Gareth Jenkins an expert, then he backtracks a bit on it, and it leads to a dramatic intervention by Chair of the Inquiry, Sir Wyn Williams, to actually say, can you actually just start answering the questions for us, please? Let's see what happens in this dramatic testimony as we jump into the Post Office inquiry.
In this paragraph, you refer to the normal systems and procedures for obtaining information from Fujitsu. What were the normal systems and procedures for obtaining information from Fujitsu?
I think I may be the wrong person to ask. I don't know to that because wasn't privy to the contract or even the relationships. I didn't know people like Penny Thomas existed, the Prosecution Support Office, who was basically...
You say here that you were worried that the normal systems and procedures would be too slow.
Indeed, so he must have had some awareness, mustn't he, of what the normal systems and procedures were. But I'm suspecting, based off what we know so far, that maybe he didn't
have understood what they were.
What they were was when the investigation officer says, Jarnail, this can't be done, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And that's when I got hold of Penny Thomas. And then I think that it came a time when she actually... I think sent me some email as to what the post office needed to do, and I think that's what we were discussing yesterday, wasn't we, when we were trying to get information from them. But like anything in life, they probably have got set procedures and systems in place because I've never used them. It wasn't something that I was aware of intimately. I knew probably there would be because there's a contractual commercial relationship between two parties.
Probably knowing that there would be and knowing there were two different things, though. And he's not said, I presume, in his witness statement this was the case. He said that is the case. Maybe someone like Penny Thomas could clear this up a bit more. I have had a bit of a look through, but I can't see any testimony from her anywhere.
And the post office. But as a legal, the prosecution solicitor in-house, something that I didn't use, I wouldn't be aware of in detail. I mean, I would know in general terms because there would be some relationship, there would be something in writing, some contract or agreement, but I can't tell you now as to what they were. And even at that stage, I wasn't aware of it. All I was trying to do, from a practical point of view, from an empirical point of view, from the real world point of view, was trying to get this thing moving because it's in court, and the judge had given directions, a timetable as to certain things needed to be done.
By the experts?
Yes, yeah.
So was it from that moment, from when the judge gave directions as to the service of expert reports and the meeting of experts, that you treated Mr. Jenkins as an expert?
Well, we couldn't find any experts from the outer world who knew the system. I did look.
My question, and I would really appreciate it. I'd appreciate it if you'd focus on my question rather than talking about other stuff.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Was it from the moment that the judge directed a timetable for the service of expert reports and that the expert should meet and produce a statement of areas of agreement and disagreement that you treated Mr. Jenkins as an expert?
No.
I think it was a bit of a slip of the tongue there, because I'm pretty sure he said the experts. Well, we know he agreed that the defence expert was an expert, so who was the other expert if he didn't mean Gareth Jenkins?
So despite the court treating him as an expert,
No,
you did not?
At that time, I'm talking about the... no, Mr. Maybe at cross purposes. The time and the dates I'm talking about, Mr. Jenkins didn't exist. I didn't know Mr. Jenkins.
So, okay, let's talk about the thing I'm talking about.
Okay.
Well, he did exist. He might not have existed in the case, but I think that's a bit harsh.
When the court directed a timetable for the production of expert reports and directed that the expert should meet to produce statements of agreement and disagreement, from that moment on, did you treat Mr. Jenkins as an expert?
What date are we talking about? When are you? Because there's a date where they...
Autumn 2009.
I think that they wanted the experts, but we didn't have an expert at that time.
No. So when the court issued, we're going to come to them later. I'm just asking you on this issue at the moment. We're going to come and look at all of these documents in a moment.
No.
When in autumn 2009 the court issued directions that mentioned experts on each side, after that point, did you treat Mr. Jenkins as an expert?
No, because...
Why not?
Ignoring the direction of the court. The court said he is an expert, so I'm confused by this. But I'm also a little bit confused, and maybe it's because, I'm not a lawyer, but would it be usual for a court to kind of just say they are an expert in this? I mean, presumably they would satisfy themselves of the qualifications and experience of the person if that was going to be the case. But surely there must have been some inference from the post office that he was being put forward as an expert, or them not being 100% clear about what they're putting him forward as. Maybe the court sees witnesses of fact, or the way the post office described a witness as fact as putting forward an expert. That would be the only way that it seems to make sense of how they ended up in this position in court.
Mr. Jenkins wasn't there. Mr. Jenkins only came back around about February time.
So, did you know that Mr. Jenkins, as an employee of Fujitsu and somebody who worked day to day on Horizon, was a person where the prosecution, perhaps more than in other circumstances, needed to ensure that he understood his duties to the court?
Obviously, I knew he was an employee because he was recommended by head of legal for Fujitsu by his employer.
What about the second bit of the question then?
What's that?
Did you know that it was all the more important? He wasn't somebody that enjoyed functional independence. He wasn't independent.
Well,
That it was all the more important that you should ensure that he understood his duties to the court.
well, you're posing this question about 10, 15, 20 years after.
Yeah, but essentially the nub of what he's getting to here is saying, if you're aware that there may be some bias in a witness, for example, he works for the company that has created the Horizon system, you've got to be super careful to make sure that actually their evidence isn't biased and as independent would be the wrong word, but as fair as possible.
That the focus there,
13, I think.
well, 13 then, at that moment, I think my primary concern was to find somebody who knew this very specialist system, who knew the system. And as when the directions were given around about December, I don't know whether December or I don't know what the actual dates were, but year 2009, say. Obviously, my concern, or the post office concern, should be, because I did sort of generally let it be known that this is where we are, we need to get an expert to explain the system. And I think the head of legal, Rob Wilson, said, well, we never had anybody. And I think a few others, Juliet McFarland, who was basically a head or leading the sub-postmasters cases. She couldn't come up with a name. I looked in the Law Society Gazette for an expert, and I think I went further afield. I think I spoke to the university, and they didn't know the system well, and I think that's where David Jones' recommendation of Mr. Jenkins came into being.
One of the things I'm trying to wrap my head around, though, is the defence found an expert that was independent, that didn't have the knowledge of Horizon, and they are saying necessarily didn't have the knowledge of Horizon, but was commenting on some things which could go wrong in software like that, which is, like a pretty similar, viewpoint from where I'm coming from. I know how these systems work, but obviously I only know in terms of evidence of what was happening at Fujitsu and the post office, what they are willing to say. So naturally, your views are caveated. However, based on that, you see, it's a very sophisticated system, so we needed someone inside Fujitsu to comment on it, but we wanted an independent expert. But they were discrediting the defence's expert because they didn't have that internal knowledge of the Fujitsu system. So the person that he's looking for, he knows doesn't exist, and he knew never existed, surely. But the option was still available to them to do exactly the same as they had with the defense expert. Say, well, Mr. Jenkins knows the system better than anybody else. Maybe he can brief an independent expert on computer systems, in computer science, in enterprise software, in the same way that we asked him to brief the defence expert. Surely that's the solution there.
And he came in as somebody who knew the system well. There was obviously, he's employee of the employer. Yes, of course. I mean, that follows then, doesn't it? It doesn't follow, but obviously, yes, I would have been aware of that, but that wasn't the prime consideration. First consideration was like any person who could assist the prosecution and the court, and then I think was to understand the system at that stage, and maybe at that stage we should have brought in somebody from externally who was an independent, bit like the defence expert, to take it all the way to the court as an independent, and that's when the duties under the common law and under the statute would have come into play. That's when we would have formulated it in a sort of if he was a professional expert.
Mr. Singh, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you just told me in one part of a very long answer that you were looking for an expert to deal with the issues arising from Horizon. You told me that you were unable to find such a person, and therefore Mr. Jenkins was introduced to you. What better evidence do I need for the fact that Mr. Jenkins was an expert than that which you just said?
Well, sir, I understand that, but then
Well, then, if you understand it, will you concentrate on Mr. Beer's questions and answer them a bit more succinctly, please?
So it's very difficult to work something in my head as quickly as Mr. Beer can, because I'm up at an age and I've been out of practice such a long time to get put it together.
Take a breath before you answer. Think about your answer.
I will, sir. I will.
Answer.
Is there any way I can have pen and paper and I can sort of do that? Because I can't.
Of course. Let's have a morning break and let Mr. Singh have some paper and pen to prepare himself.
That's very kind, sir. That's great. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Sir, can we say 25 past, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was quite a dramatic intervention there from Sir Wynne, who's chair of the Post Office Inquiry there. I mean, and it's something that I've pretty much been saying since very early on in this start of the testimony about the experts that Jarnail Singh had or had not identified, and the defence expert saying, if you're saying this is the only person in the world who can possibly comment on this system competently, you found your expert. Whether you consider them an expert or not, in your own definition, is largely irrelevant. They're an expert. They're the only person who knows the system. If they aren't an expert in it, then what is an expert?